a win for Trump's lawyers in the ongoing DOJ investigation over the documents from Mar-a-Lago. The Florida district judge granted the request. Here are the details.
A small victory today for the former president. After 4 days of deliberation, Trump-appointed Judge Eileen Cannon ruled that a special master should be appointed, though a specific person has yet to be named. This means that a third party will now review potentially sensitive documents before the Department of Justice is allowed to use the seized materials for any investigative purpose.
The Trump team said during arguments that a special master was needed as a way to ensure independent neutrality in the investigation. They argued that without a special master, they're flying blind because they don't know exactly what documents the Justice Department says it has already reviewed that would be protected by claims of executive privilege or attorney-client privilege.
Judge Cannon agreed to appoint the special master, saying Trump is at risk of suffering injury from the government's retention and potential use of privileged materials in the course of a process that thus far has been closed off to him. Part of what influenced her decision was the government filter team's failure to identify all potentially privileged items. Trump and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene both commented over the weekend on the ongoing investigation.
Oh, and I definitely think the upper echelon of the Department of Justice and FBI does not deserve a paycheck.
Republicans and the MAGA movement are not the ones trying to undermine our democracy. We are the ones trying to save our democracy. Very simple.
Judge Cannon also ordered the Justice Department to stop reviewing the records as part of its criminal investigation. But U.S. intelligence officials are allowed to continue conducting a classification review as well as a national security damage assessment. The DOJ has argued that allowing a special master to review would slow down the investigation. Judge Cannon disagreed and has directed lawyers from both sides to submit a joint filing that includes a list of special master candidates.
The United States military is said to be one of the most accepting places to work in the country. Soldiers often use the expression that they all bleed green. However, in the polarizing political climate that we live in, some say the culture is changing. Joining us to discuss, we have retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub. Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Steve, it's great to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Colonel, we're approaching 21 years since the 9/11 attacks, a moment that actually unified the nation and strengthened military resolve. If you could reflect on what it felt like for you and where we are now.
Sure. Yeah, that's a significant change in American culture and the American military specifically. But when 9/11 happened, I was a captain in the Army out of Fort Carson, Colorado, and you could just see the clear patriotism and pride that had come out across the country. And we knew that at this point, we really had a common enemy that everybody was able to identify. Today is the opposite, really. Often our own soldiers are under the friendly fire of their own chain of command, and you've got a divided nation in many ways. Sometimes it's because that's what is being thrust upon us, is this desire to force division, and a woke culture generally that's affecting the entire country and our readiness right now. And it is hard to see a future where we can come together as one nation as we're designed to be again. And I don't know what would cause that, but I think we have to keep working towards it again.
Colonel, to your point, this term wokeness is kind of multi-pronged. There's different aspects of it, one of which is the term corpsman not being used anymore to being substituted with a gender-neutral term. When it comes to wokeness in the military, what types of things are you hearing about?
Well, that's just one small sample for sure of what is common across all the forces right now, unfortunately, and that is this idea that your gender, your ethnicity, some sort of gender identification, whatever you want to label yourself as, it is driving a wedge between what's supposed to be the most tight-knit team in this entire country because it requires it. I'm hearing about things like corpsmen being changed into medical personnel or something like that. I'm hearing those who are patriots now in the military getting driven out for failure to identify with this current agenda, as well as a result, many of the Patriot kids, I guess you could say, the parents are encouraging them not to sign up. The kids themselves don't want to sign up. And those who do sign up come in pre-programmed in many ways, and their wokeness, I guess you could say, is accelerating into a military that is going to be lacking readiness, because they're really just becoming another political arm of the White House and not necessarily a military arm focused on defending our Constitution and being a strong team.
I mean, so is it fair to say that this is politically driven by those in power versus a consensus among the rank and file?
At the senior ranks, I would say there's definitely politically driven, and that's no different than it has been throughout history. There's a point in persons in the military's rank structure when it becomes less about leadership and war fighting than it is about the political pursuit of often career over fulfilling of the oath. There's been some phenomenal officers in the history of America for sure that have not done that, but right now the senior chain of command is falling lockstep behind this agenda because they don't take their oath seriously, and they want to just maintain their positions where they are, continue to get promoted, take the paycheck, and see where they can go from there. I think that's pretty sad, unfortunately, but also unfortunately true. The rank and file, though, my concern is, and the risk that I see is that as these junior soldiers come in, whether they be lieutenants or privates or specialists or whatever, and that rank structure across all the services, because they've come in already kind of pre-programmed into the woke culture, you're going to see that culture inculcate through all the ranks over the next decade or so if we don't fix this with some very big moves. And I increasingly question the military's capacity to deal with that and turn back towards being the organization that is respected the way it's supposed to be across this country by all people, regardless.
Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Steve, it's a pleasure to be with you again. Thank you.
This November, abortion is on the ballot in multiple states. Since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June, states have moved to either strengthen abortion rights or add new protections for the unborn. Kentucky has a trigger law restricting most abortions, but it's facing lawsuits. GOP lawmakers want an amendment to the state constitution clarifying that there is no right to abortion. In Vermont, abortion is legal at all stages of pregnancy, and voters will decide if that should be added into the state's constitution. California's Proposition Number 1 would make pro-abortion laws part of the state's constitution. Currently, there are some limits on late-term abortions in the state. And a referendum in Montana focuses on babies born during a failed abortion. They seek to penalize abortion providers who do not provide medical treatment. China denounced the U.S. for arms sales to Taiwan. The Biden administration on Friday announced an arms deal of over $1 billion. A spokesperson for the CCP says that the deal violates the One China principle and damages U.S.-China relations. She went on to add that China would firmly defend its sovereignty and security interests. Beijing has been more critical of the U.S. since Speaker Pelosi visited Taiwan last month. The biggest part of the military package supports a radar program providing air defense warnings. This is timely as China recently conducted a number of military exercises near the self-ruled island. Just last week, Taiwan fired warning shots at a Chinese drone that entered its airspace. Beijing's blustery rhetoric comes weeks before a summit between President Biden and Pacific Island leaders. NASA's Artemis program takes questions after 2 failed launches. The team aborted the 2 attempts due to fuel leaks. NASA has waited years to send the capsule around the moon, and the next launched attempt is now weeks away.
This is an incredibly hard business. This is an initial test flight of this vehicle. As was said by Administrator Nelson, we're going to fly when we're ready.
After the latest setback, mission managers decided to haul the rocket off the pad and into the hangar for further repairs and tests. Officials say it's likely to take several weeks until the next attempt. The cost of these 2 failures to launch are far less than a failure after a rocket is in the sky, according to NASA. The initial launch will include test dummies, and later ones will include an astronaut crew. Thousands of people jammed the coast over Labor Day weekend. They were hoping to see the launch, but left disappointed.